I woke up from a coma to find out my baby had been given away by my own sister. That's the kind of sentence that sounds like a twisted plot in a movie. But for me it was real. It was raw. It was the cruel truth I opened my eyes to after spending 7 months in a hospital bed, paralyzed, unable to speak, unable to scream the one word that was burning inside me: no. I had just given birth. I remembered the blinding lights, the searing pain, the nurse placing my newborn daughter in my arms for just a few seconds, before everything went black. I had slipped into a coma right there in the delivery room. No goodbye. No chance to hold her again. No chance to protect her. And I had no husband. No parents. No one but my sister Angela. Angela, who I trusted with everything. Angela, who held my hand before the surgery and promised, "Don't worry, I've got you. And I've got the baby too." Angela, who smiled and reassured the doctors that she'd care for my daughter while I recovered. Angela, who turned around the moment they wheeled me away, and betrayed me in the most vicious way imaginable. I heard it all. I wasn't totally gone. I was in there. Conscious but silent. A prisoner in my own body. I couldn't move or speak, but I could hear. And the first time I heard her say, "It's better this way," she wouldn't want the child to suffer with no mother, I knew something was terribly wrong. Then I heard her say the words that shattered everything. "I've already signed the papers. The baby's been placed with a family that can give her more than my sister ever could." She gave my daughter away. She gave my baby girl to strangers, like I was already dead. I wanted to scream, to fight, to beg. But all I could do was listen while the sister I loved ripped my world to shreds behind my back. She could have waited. She could have held on just a little longer. But no, Angela took the easiest way out. She told everyone I had no plan, no will, no future. She told them she was doing what was best. But really, she wanted freedom. She didn't want to raise a child that wasn't hers. She wanted her life back, clean and unburdened. And she made sure I couldn't stop her. The worst part, everyone believed her. By the time I opened my eyes for real months later, the baby was long gone. I was alone. Forgotten. My sister had vanished. Moved out of state, no contact, no explanation. The doctors tried to smile. The nurses clapped and cried. "You made it," they said. But they didn't understand. My daughter was gone. My whole reason for surviving had been stolen while I slept. I lay in that hospital bed, numb, staring at the ceiling as the truth hit me like a freight train. Angela had betrayed me. My baby was gone. And no one had fought for me. But I was awake now. And what Angela didn't realize, what nobody realized, was that I wasn't going to let this end like a tragedy. I was going to find my daughter. I was going to take back the life she stole from me. And I was going to make sure my sister regretted everything. The nurses told me it was a miracle I survived. That the fact I could even sit up, let alone speak, was a medical anomaly. But I wasn't thinking about gratitude, I was thinking about my daughter. My body had come back, but my heart was still hollow. My daughter, her face, the tiny glimpse I had of her, haunted me. A pair of soft brown eyes. Wispy curls. Her tiny fingers curled around mine for less than a minute before the coma swallowed me whole. I asked the doctors, the social worker, anyone who would listen. "Where is my daughter?" Their faces twisted in discomfort. They kept repeating the same line. "Your sister handled the paperwork. She placed the child in a private adoption. There's nothing more we can do. Nothing more we can do." Like my baby was a misplaced file. Like she wasn't mine to fight for. Angela had covered her tracks well. The adoption was private and closed, meaning the names of the adoptive parents were sealed. No access. No contact. No trail. The social worker said the papers were all in order, signed with power of attorney Angela had requested while I was unconscious. Legally, my daughter was gone. But in my soul she was still mine. And I wasn't letting her go. I was discharged from the hospital 2 weeks later. No family to pick me up. No welcome home. No baby waiting in a crib. Just an empty apartment, dusty with silence and bills piled high like tombstones of a life I no longer recognized. I didn't eat. I didn't sleep. I just sat in the dark holding the only photo I had, the one from the hospital bracelet, A blurry picture of my daughter's footprint on a certificate no one thought I'd live to sign. That's when it happened. I opened my email just out of habit and found something strange. A forwarded message. From Angela's old account. It was a casual note to a woman named Deborah. The subject line said finalized. The body of the message read, "Baby has been placed. Private. No returns. Pling. No blood ties disclosed. Your family can rest easy. No blood ties disclosed. Pling." My daughter had been handed off like a secret. A burden scrubbed clean of any connection to me. My hands shook as I scrolled down and found a tiny scrap of gold. A phone number. An address in Delaware. A forwarding address for Angela. Probably something she meant to delete but missed. That was all I needed. I took a bus the next day. My legs were still weak. My hands trembled when I held the railing. But every mile I crossed was 1 mile closer to the truth. 1 mile closer to her. Angela lived in a pristine townhouse now. Gated. Polished. Clean-cut hedges and a shiny new car in the driveway. I watched from a distance, dressed in clothes 2 sizes too big, hair pulled under a scarf, like a ghost haunting her life. I rang the bell. She didn't recognize me at first. Then she froze. She blinked. Then smiled. A nervous twitch in her eye. "Oh my God," she said, "you're alive." I stepped forward. "Where's my daughter?" Her smile faded. "You shouldn't be here. I asked you to take care of her," I said, my voice shaking. "You promised me." She looked me in the eye and said the most brutal thing I've ever heard. "You were as good as dead. And I wasn't going to ruin my life raising a child that wasn't mine." She paused, then added coldly, "As far as I'm concerned, you are dead." And just like that, she slammed the door in my face. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there as the final thread between us snapped like a dried twig. That was the moment something inside me shifted. If Angela had killed me off in her mind, if she'd erased me from the world, then fine. Let her believe I was dead. Because the woman who walked away from that doorstep that night wasn't the same one who'd gone into that coma. She was stronger now. Smarter. Sharper. And she wasn't just going to find her daughter. She was going to rise so high, so fast, that every single person who counted her out would have to look up just to catch a glimpse of her shadow. It took me 6 years. 6 long, brutal years of clawing my way out of poverty, grief, and invisibility. At first, I could barely hold down a job. My health wasn't fully restored. My muscles ached like they remembered the coma better than I did. I worked night shifts cleaning offices. Took online classes during the day when I could keep my eyes open. I sold everything I had, jewelry, furniture, even my wedding dress, for tuition and rent. No one believed in me, and honestly I didn't need them to. I started with 1 small tech certification. Then another. Then more. I was hungry, starved, for a life that couldn't be taken from me. I'd been powerless when they stole my daughter. I would never be powerless again. By year 4 I had built my own tech consultancy, tiny at first, then viral. One of my apps hit. Then another. Within 2 years I was sitting across from venture capitalists in high-rise buildings who didn't care about my past. Only my numbers. And those numbers were gold. I was rich. Independent. Respected. But none of that success mattered compared to the ache that lived inside my chest every single day. The ache of a mother who had no idea where her child was. Until the call came. I'd hired a private investigator the moment I could afford one. He said the trail was cold at first, but finally he found something. A school enrollment record for a 13-year-old girl. The adoptive mother's name matched one of the aliases tied to that Deborah email from years ago. I stared at the photo he sent me like it was a miracle. There she was. My baby girl. Not a baby anymore, but a young teen with the same deep eyes and stubborn jaw as mine. My hands trembled as I touched the screen. She was real. She existed. She was alive. And she was mine. I flew to her school the next week. I told myself I wouldn't approach her directly, that I'd just see her. Maybe talk to her teachers. Feel her presence. But fate doesn't wait for clean plans. I saw her outside the building after dismissal. She was talking to another girl, laughing. My feet moved before my brain caught up. Suddenly, I was standing a few feet away, heart pounding out of my ribs. "Hi," I said softly. She looked up. Her eyes met mine and didn't flicker. Just polite confusion. "Hi," she replied, wary. I tried to breathe. "You look so much like your mother." She gave a quick, awkward laugh. "My mom's blonde. I'm adopted." I nodded, eyes burning. "I know." She squinted. "Do I know you?" I opened my mouth. Closed it. "No. Not really." She smiled tightly, clearly uncomfortable. "Okay, well, I've gotta go." She turned and walked away. I stood there frozen. My child had spoken to me like I was a stranger on the street. Because to her, I couldn't stop the tears. I tried. But I stood there sobbing, shaking, feeling the cruel weight of every stolen year slam into my ribs. And then, as if the day hadn't hurt enough, Angela showed up. She was parked across the street. Her new car. Her new designer bag. Her same cold eyes. She stepped out like she'd been watching the whole thing. I watched in horror as my daughter ran to her and embraced her. Angela looked at me and laughed. She gave my daughter her car keys and she drove off, leaving just the two of us. "I bet that's not what you expected," she said with a coy smile on her face. I was the one who adopted your daughter. It's a long story and I don't want to bore you with the details. But she's legally mine now. She's my daughter and no one else." I wiped my face. She didn't even recognize me. Angela smirked. "Why would she? You're nobody to her." My fingers curled into fists. "I'm her mother." She leaned in close and hissed, "No. You're a ghost. And she's better off not knowing you exist." "Someday she'll find out the truth," I whispered. Angela laughed. "By then she'll hate you. You'll look like a crazy woman who came out of nowhere to ruin her perfect life." She leaned in again, crueler this time. "You're already dead, remember?" I wanted to scream. To hit her. But I didn't. Because I realized something in that moment. Angela was terrified. She knew I was no longer the helpless, half-dead girl she dumped in a hospital bed. She saw the woman I'd become. She knew she couldn't control the story anymore. Now it was my turn. I didn't know how I'd get my daughter back. But I would. And when I did, everyone who tried to bury me would wish they'd left me in peace. Angela thought she won. She thought I'd crumble after that encounter, that I'd crawl back to wherever I came from humiliated and broken, that I'd accept being erased from my own child's life like I was some regrettable footnote. But Angela underestimated one thing. I was no longer the woman she left for dead. I didn't rush. I didn't scream. I didn't go to the news or social media. Well, that would have made it easy for her to spin the story, portray me as a deranged woman trying to disrupt her adopted daughter's life. Instead, I studied. I waited. I planned. I spent the next few months digging into every corner of Angela's life. I hired the best investigators, cyber specialists, and legal advisors money could buy. I was meticulous, quiet, invisible. And what I found? Angela had built her new life on lies. She'd falsified court documents to gain guardianship of my daughter, bribed a nurse to keep the birth hush-hush, lied to adoption agencies, using a fake name and fabricated death certificate. She'd forged my signature on termination of rights papers, then shredded the originals. But that wasn't the worst part. She'd sold my daughter's story. Literally. She'd turned herself into a hero mom on parenting blogs and podcasts, telling stories of how she adopted a poor, abandoned baby left motherless after a tragic accident. She even published a memoir, complete with photos, fabricated trauma, and a victim narrative so sickeningly sweet it made people sob and donate. She was profiting off the child she stole. That's when I stopped sleeping. I couldn't eat, couldn't rest. I was consumed by rage. But I didn't lose control. I channeled it. Step 1. Evidence. We compiled everything. I paid a forensic analyst to confirm the forged papers. We tracked bank transfers to the nurse who'd signed off on the fake discharge. We even found an old hospital janitor who remembered the whispers about a coma patient whose baby disappeared. Then came step 2. Legal reinforcements. My lawyers were aggressive. They specialized in complex family law, fraud, and custody battles involving adoption scandals. They were relentless. But I knew better than to attack head-on. No, Angela had spent years building a pristine image. I needed to dismantle it piece by piece in public. So I started small. One anonymous tip to a mid-sized parenting blog. I posed as a former social worker. Sent in vague but alarming details. They published a curiosity piece. Is one influencer mom's story too good to be true? The article didn't accuse her outright, but it raised eyebrows. Questions began circulating online. Comments flooded her posts. People dug deeper. Angela started sweating. Then came phase 3. I reached out to a popular podcast that had once hosted her. I requested an anonymous interview and dropped just enough truth. About the hospital, the coma, the adoption under false pretenses. I even slipped them a redacted medical record. The episode blew up. Angela panicked. She posted a tearful video denying everything, saying a mentally unstable woman was trying to destroy her family. She begged her followers for support. But the internet wasn't buying it. The evidence had cracked the door open. And now people were storming in. Within weeks, journalists were reaching out to hospitals requesting comment. A retired nurse anonymously confirmed what I knew. There was a woman who'd given birth under emergency conditions, and no death certificate was ever filed. Angela's house of cards began to wobble. And I hadn't even revealed myself yet. But the most important piece was still missing. My daughter. I couldn't approach her directly, not yet. Not while Angela still held power over her. I needed her to see me on her own. I needed her to doubt the version of the story she'd been told. So I did something terrifying. I made a video. Not viral. Not angry. Just raw. I sat in my apartment, quiet, trembling, and told the camera the truth. I explained the coma. The betrayal. The sister who took everything. I didn't name names. I didn't attack. I just told my story. My heartbreak. My hope. And at the end I said this. To the girl who looks like me, if you've ever felt like something was missing, if your soul has ever ached in ways you couldn't explain, please know I never gave you away. I search for you every day. And I will never stop. Because you are mine. Always. I uploaded it anonymously. No hashtags. No mentions. Just a truth that floated out into the void. And I waited. 2 weeks later I got a message. It was from a private account. One sentence. Are you the woman in the video? I stared at the screen, breathless. It was her. My daughter had found me. And Angela's empire was about to come crashing down. I stared at the message for nearly an hour before I responded. Only if you want me to be. It was the gentlest way I could say yes without overwhelming her. She didn't reply for days. I thought I'd lost her again. Maybe she was afraid. Maybe Angela had already caught wind of the video and was trying to shut everything down. But on the 5th day, just before midnight, my phone buzzed again. I saw the necklace. You were wearing it in the video. I have the same one. I always wondered. My fingers shook as I typed. It was yours. You wore it as a baby. I never took it off you. Pause. Then another message. Can we meet? I couldn't breathe. We picked a quiet cafe on the outskirts of the city. I got there early, heart racing like I was walking into the most important job interview of my life. In a way I wasn't just a mother anymore. I was a stranger trying to earn a place in her child's world. And then she walked in. Beautiful. Strong. My baby, all grown up. She looked at me like she was staring at a ghost. There was recognition in her eyes, but also confusion, sadness, betrayal. I don't know what to believe, she said softly. My whole life has been built around a lie. I thought my mom, Angela, saved me. I thought you were gone. I nodded, holding back tears. That's what she wanted you to believe. But I never abandoned you. I was in a coma. I never even got to hold you before she took you. Her lips trembled. She told me you were a junkie. That you OD'd. That no one wanted me but her. My hands curled into fists on my lap, nails digging into my palms. She lied. Every word of it. I showed her everything. medical reports, hospital records, the investigative files, even the photo of us taken by a nurse right before I lost consciousness. Me on the hospital bed, pale and bleeding, and her, barely minutes old, cradled against me. He stared at it for a long time. Then she whispered, "Why would she do this?" Because she wanted the life I had. Because she was jealous. Because she wanted a child but didn't want to give birth. Because it was easier to steal than to face her own brokenness. But I didn't say all that. Instead, I simply said, because she could. She wiped a tear and asked the question that broke me. "Do you still want me?" I grabbed her hands. I never stopped. We cried. Quietly, painfully, like two women mourning the years we lost. But it wasn't all grief. There was something else between us now. Something raw and unfinished but real. Hope. But the reunion wasn't the end. Angela still had to face what she'd done. And I was done playing nice. We filed the lawsuit a week later. Fraud. Identity theft. Custodial interference. Emotional abuse. My lawyers made it airtight. Angela was served in public, during a charity event she was hosting. The same crowd she used to spin her saintly image watched as she was handed papers that read like the script of a crime drama. She panicked. Tried to spin it. Went live, sobbing about betrayal, about a mentally unstable woman trying to ruin her family. But the public didn't buy it anymore. Too many receipts. Too many lies exposed. The documentary-style podcast had aired a follow-up episode, with recordings from people at the hospital, the nurse she bribed, and even a clip from my daughter confirming what she'd learned. The tide turned fast. Her sponsors dropped her. The memoir was pulled. Her followers turned on her. And the final nail? The judge issued a preliminary order for psychological evaluation and immediate removal of all profits tied to my daughter's identity, including the six-figure memoir advance. Angela lost everything. But she still refused to admit it. She sat across from me in court one day, eyes full of venom. "You think this will bring her back to you?" she hissed. "She's my daughter." "No," I said, my voice calm and steel-edged. "She's not your anything. You stole her. And you're going to pay." Then I turned to the judge and handed over a final document, an affidavit from a therapist, detailing the long-term trauma Angela inflicted on my daughter by raising her in a life built on lies. It was the final straw. The judge ruled in our favor. Angela was barred from contact, ordered to pay restitution. Her accounts were frozen. And every cent she made from the lie went into a trust for my daughter. Me. I finally got to hold my baby again. This time as a grown woman sitting across from me at dinner, laughing about awkward first dates and bad college roommates. And every once in a while she'd reach across the table and squeeze my hand, just to remind herself I was real. As I was. I survived everything they did to erase me. And now I was here. With her. But we still had one final chapter. Because I wasn't just here to reclaim my daughter. I was here to rebuild my empire, and destroy every piece of Angela's legacy left standing. The first time I walked into a TV studio after everything exploded, I wore a deep emerald suit, heels that clicked like a gavel, and the necklace my daughter had returned to me. The same one Angela once tore from my child's neck. It had come full circle. The producer of one of the biggest daytime talk shows in the country greeted me like I was royalty. "Everyone wants to hear your story," she whispered. But I wasn't just here to tell a story. I was here to write the final chapter. The interview went viral within hours. By the next morning I had a literary agent, offers for a documentary, and an email from a tech CEO who had once known me, before the coma, offering me a consulting deal to help restructure a major women's advocacy foundation. They remembered me. Not just as a victim but as the brilliant strategist I once was. And with every opportunity, every dollar earned, every stage I stepped onto, I did something very deliberate. I reclaimed my name. Angela had stolen more than a child. She'd stolen my legacy, my career, my future. She built her image on the ashes of mine. But now the world knew the truth. And as I rebuilt my empire brick by brick, I made sure she felt every quake of it. The trust fund I created for my daughter wasn't just fattened by Angela's seized memoir profits. It was matched tenfold by the wealth I created on my own. I started a company called Reclaim Her, offering legal, emotional, and financial aid to women whose identities or children had been stolen through fraud or abuse. Within months, we had over 1,000 applicants. I stood before senators and congresswomen, testifying about medical rights, postpartum protections, and legal loopholes that allowed women like Angela to go unchecked. And every time I stepped off that podium, I wasn't alone. My daughter was beside me. Not as a symbol, but as a partner in the fight. Angela tried, desperately, to cling to the remains of her life. She sued us for defamation. She released pitiful videos claiming I brainwashed her daughter, that I was the manipulator. But no one listened anymore. Her voice had turned to static. Even her most loyal followers turned away when the truth couldn't be buried under tears anymore. And then the final blow. A publisher approached me with an offer to tell my version of the story. Not just about what Angela did, but about how I rose from it. They offered 7 figures. A bestseller campaign. Film rights. I almost declined. Not because I didn't want to share, but because I didn't want to relive it again. But my daughter looked at me and said, "Tell them. All of it. So no one else ever gets erased like you did." So I told it. Every betrayal. Every lie. Every battle to come back. The memoir Unerased, The Mother They Tried to Bury, debuted at #1 on the New York Times bestseller list. And in the last chapter I included something Angela could never take back. A picture of me and my daughter, laughing, arms wrapped around each other, survivors of a storm we never asked for, but overcame anyway. She now calls me Mom without hesitation. She sleeps peacefully at night knowing the truth. She's healing day by day. Me. I'm not just back. I'm stronger, richer, louder, and more dangerous to people like Angela than ever before. Because I know how far they'll go to silence a woman. And I now know exactly how to burn their lies to the ground. Let this be a warning to anyone who thinks they can erase a mother from her own child's life. She might lose everything. She might disappear for years. But when she comes back, he comes back with fire. If this story moved you even a little, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. We drop new stories like this every day because women like her deserve to be heard. Your voice matters too, and you never know who might need to hear that they're not alone.